Are you ready to grow your financial practice to heights you've never imagined? You're listening to the Elevated Advisor Podcast with your online business mentor and host, David Scranton. Each week, you'll learn Dave's secrets that have helped him become one of the most successful financial advisors in the country. So are you ready to become an elevated advisor? The Elevated Advisor Podcast starts now.
And welcome to the Elevated Advisor Podcast. I'm David Scranton, your host. And today we have a guest here that I'm pretty sure you're going to want to hear what he has to say. He has incredible experience throughout the course of his career. And he's been in this business his entire life, and he's pretty close to my age. So now you have a feel for the fact he does have a lot of experience. He has built huge agencies for major insurance companies around the country. He's coached and mentored advisors. And frankly, he's coached and mentored advisors also at our very own Sound Income Group for just about a decade before going back out on his own to become a financial advisor once again. The career sometime goes full circle. So a big welcome to Steve Archer, the owner of Strategic Senior Benefits Group right here in Fort Lauderdale.
Thanks very much for having me.
So, okay, let me ask you. I know today you want to talk about, hey, if you're going to work with retirees and people close to retirement, how you need to provide other services, right? You just can't be an investment person anymore. And I want to get to that, but you know, I know it's the fall here, 2024. We got this hurricane around the corner. So tell me the truth. You didn't drive across town just to see me here. You come on. You're running from the hurricane, aren't you?
I'm not. I would brave a hailstorm to come and spend time with you, Dave.
Oh, how nice. That's awesome. we were joking about it before starting the podcast because, of course, the media blows it out of proportion. I drove in this morning, our entire office building, not just our company, but everybody else. Our company's mostly here, but the building is empty. So the parking lot was empty. I got a rock star parking spot right up front, right?
Yep, I did too.
And the sun's out. And the wind's maybe 10 miles an hour, right? So it's the media once again blowing things out of proportion. And you know, the media does that in our industry too, in terms of how they blow things out of proportion. And I wish they would talk more about this concept that you're discussing, which is a one-stop shop for people that are retired or close to retirement. So tell us a little bit about why you feel so strongly that this needs to be done.
Okay. I think it's born from the fact that I see a lot of instances where a company calls themselves some sort of a specialist in a particular area, but then when you really peel back the layers of the onion, you find that they don't really do things much differently than any other type of firm. And so if you're going to truly specialize, for instance, we're working with people 55 and over, you ought to be able to answer the specific questions and address the specific needs of that age group. An example. 2 weeks ago, I got a referral from someone who came in with tax questions related to what will the effect of increased withdrawals from her IRAs be on Social Security and
IRMA
and her overall taxation. She was referred by her advisor. Not directly to me, but her advisor told her, you need to get somebody with tax knowledge to answer this question.
See, and what's scary is her advisor should just call himself an investment manager, an investment counselor.
Right.
He probably calls himself a financial advisor or financial planner,
And
right? But he's not. Whereas you're acting as a financial planner.
Of course. So, but the point is now we're talking about somebody who's in my area of strength. She comes in, we get the tax questions answered, but of course it also gave me the opportunity to look at her allocations, which were not in line with what she was trying to get accomplished. I pointed this out to her. And so now she's a tax client and she's also a wealth management client.
Right.
And the point is that you need to be able to specialize. If you call yourself a specialist, you have to be that specialist. And if you're not going to be able to do the actual work yourself, you certainly need to bring the resources into your firm to be able to accommodate those needs yourself.
So you made a great example of why it's a good defensive strategy, right? I mean, think about it. We might have people listening to this podcast who've lost clients in the same way that this advisor did, right? Because they weren't providing a service. They found another advisor who can do that. And think about like the big wirehouses, for example. And a lot of the big wirehouses, right? What's the common phrase? Oh, can you help me with taxes? And if you work for one of the big wirehouses, what's the common response?
No, I can't give tax advice.
I'm not allowed to give tax advice, right? Think about how insane that is, that you might have financial advisor on your business card and not be able to give tax advice. So some of you might be handcuffed, which is why, you might be looking to make a change. We have one person in my Connecticut office I can think of that one of her big hot buttons when she joined us was because we did tax planning, and she wasn't allowed to do it at one of the big wirehouses. So she left, joined us, and now she's doing the tax and the estate and so on. But if you're independent, if you're an independent advisor, well, then you have no excuse, right? You don't have somebody handcuffing you. And unless you want to be like this, this poor guy that lost a client to Steve just now, you need to consider how you're going to integrate some of those services into your mix.
And if an advisor considers himself a generalist and likes to cast a wide net, then it probably doesn't hurt. I mean, you couldn't be a specialist for everybody, right?
Sure.
So if you're a generalist, no problem. But if you're marketing yourself as a specialist of any kind, it's important to be able to address all of the needs of that person you say that you're the specialist for.
Of course. And we talked so far about the defensive reason why one of our listeners or viewers might say, hey, yes, I need to do this because I don't want to be like that poor soul that you took a client from, right? But how about the offensive reasons? How about the growth-based reasons why having those things might also help an investment management practice?
Well, for two reasons. One, from a specialist standpoint, it does give us a little bit of a wider scope. For instance, taxes and legal documents both can lead to a wealth management client. Mm-hmm. And it leads to a wealth management client who is a good prospect for us. We find good prospects through both of those channels. Mm-hmm. So that's one positive or offensive reason.
It's like having several different types of lures behind the boat, right?
That's correct.
You even put 3 lures. You don't put all the same. You put different lures because you don't know today which one the fish are going to be biting.
But it also gives you the opportunity to catch the fish that you can keep.
That's right.
You don't have to throw them overboard because you're going to get the right fish.
That's right.
And so that's one item. And then the other is that by having these other services, you're tying your clients to you more strongly. For instance, a person who's a tax client, who's had their trust package completed with us and is a wealth management client, probably has about a 0.01% chance of leaving us. They're tied in completely. They couldn't leave their tax advisor, legal advisor, and wealth management advisor all at the same time.
Well, in sales, they say that, and I don't know, if there's probably a difference if you have some of somebody's money versus all of their money, how sticky that client is. But in general sales, you've heard this. You've been around the sales industry as long as I have. That hey, if you have one transaction with somebody, they're a customer, and by the time you get to 3 transactions, that's when they're actually a client. Right?
That's right.
And that's when you can possibly get raving fans, when you've loved on those clients so much and helped them in so many ways.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's funny because, me, I'm not a big fan of unpaid consulting.
Right.
Right. And that's like the Sandler approach, right? They always say, no unpaid consulting, don't work for free. Either they're going to do it or they're not going to do it. I'm a big fan of that. What I like about the approach is you're not really working for free. You might be working at a discount, right? You may make more if you get them as an investment management client, but you're not working for free. You're still getting something in exchange for your time. So you're not losing your posturing or positioning with that person.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. So we got the defensive aspects. Why? Because if you're not doing it, somebody else might do it, and they may take over your client, right? The retention aspect, because once you've got, it's kind of like when you're bluefin tuna fishing, right? You get them on the hook, and then you get it, you get them in close, and you throw the harpoon, and then you get a gaff, and you get a tail gaff, and then you get tail wrap, and now you get 5 different things in the fish. The fish isn't going anywhere. So it's a defensive tool, it's a retention tool, but it's also a growth tool because it gives you another entree. So, how do you charge for this stuff, right? You're not an attorney, you're not an accountant. Tell me,
Yep.
how do you charge for this? And I do want to say a disclaimer that every state's different in the rules and how you can charge and not charge. And I don't know what state you're listening or watching this from. So, Steve, I know you'll talk about right here in the state of Florida, but how do you charge for that?
Okay, so what we'll do is, from a tax perspective, we limit it to personal tax returns for the moment. We may branch out into corporate returns as well, but for the moment, it's done us plenty of good to just do the personal tax returns. It doesn't matter how many schedules are necessary in the return. We're going to charge the same amount for everyone. It's going to be $139. Now, anybody in the tax in the tax profession would say you cannot charge $139 and make money. Well, they're 100% correct. You can't. I have to bring a tax specialist into my office.
Right, so you're not doing this yourself?
No. I have to hire a data entry person. I might be mildly involved in bringing the person on board when they come in for the first time in terms of intake and meeting them and understanding more of their situation. But the actual work of tax preparation is being done by 2 other people who I have to pay. The likelihood that the $139 charge is going to create a profit is highly unlikely. And then when you consider that we have to market for the service to bring people in, then any idea of profit goes right out the window. However, when an advisor thinks about how much they spend on an educational workshop or a dinner workshop or anything along those lines, then they see thousands of dollars going out the door before even the first opportunity for conversion comes along. And so if you look at it that way, this really isn't any different. And I think in this case, you get to see a person under more favorable circumstances.
It's funny, you've been around long enough coming from the life insurance side of the industry early on, where that, you could recommend a seconded life insurance policy for someone and they may or may not do it. They may have the guard up. But if the estate attorney recommends the seconded life insurance, they want to buy it and you have to do anything. So it's the same thing here. If you're coming in as the tax guy, in some ways it gives you better posturing.
No doubt.
So how about the estate? Tell us about the estate. Like, how do you charge there and how do you manage to do that? Because that's a whole other can of worms.
Actually, because estate planning attorneys charge such high prices to, for instance, put a trust package together, they give us more leeway. So while we're not making a tremendous amount of money, we're not losing money.
It's better than the tax return for you.
It is. So if my conversion rate on trust clients is lower than it is on tax clients, it's okay because we're making a little bit of money. We're paying a few bills with the money that we make from doing the trusts. Now,
you don't bring an outside attorney in. You don't have an attorney like you have tax preparers, correct?
I do.
You have an attorney personally that you work with?
Yeah, I'd begun by doing it with a remote outfit who worked directly with independent financial advisors, and I do the intake of the information. We'd put it up on a screen, and the client would be involved in